How have you been affected by the crisis?
I've been in many outbreaks in my life.
Oh, I think, it's the type of thing, the pandemic affects everyone and no one is exempt.
This, no doubt, is the bigger one. Now it's something huge. Now it's totally different and more complicated than before because it's a new virus. You don't know how the virus will behave. We don't know what treatment. We are not close yet. Vaccines. Now all this quarantine and lockdown is new. Then the other ones, they never have this. Now, of course, it's hard work, but this one is so much bigger. But this is life.
In many different dimensions. One of them is of social concern because I am a nurse.
Like I said, I'm a second grade teacher.
In my own life, I have been forced into a mandatory telework situation, so I'm fortunate that I get to actually still work full time. In fact, I'm as busy as I've ever been because we've had to redesign our international tours with American bands. As I was mentioning, they can't travel anymore. So we have to redesign our entire program to do virtual music programming, stay at home type music programming. But the requirements that we receive from the U.S. embassies, they haven't changed. Our ambassadors are still doing what ambassadors do, in every country around the world, just in new conditions, in different conditions of not being able to meet people in person. So we're finding, like the rest of the music industry, performing arts industry, we're finding unique ways to employ our artists in the mission, which hasn't changed.
Like everybody else, well, not everybody else, but by like a lot of people, I cannot return to work in sort of a normal fashion. I say that as I mentioned, I'm on campus now, but like my colleagues are not here, and this is we're in a new normal. I've also had quite a lot of, some of my family members have been impacted, and quite a lot of friends or friends of friends, or family members of friends who have passed.
And as soon as this came about, I could see by what I was reading and by having colleagues that are very deep into research that it was going to be serious. It was easy to see in the early stages that this was going to have a very lasting effects. So my first concern was, in my work, with the kind of work I do with transplant patients, how we were going to be able to do the changes and accommodations so we could continue serving our patients, that we only work with patients with cancer. And that worked well. We've been able to transition in many different ways until our program is still thriving well.
So they closed down all our schools.
Just before spring break, it was announced that we would be pivoting to online classes because of the coronavirus.
We went, was it like March 14th? It was all over the news, right? That some districts were closing, and we knew it was kind of on the horizon, but it was crazy to think that they're actually going to shut down all of the schools.
I had a trip scheduled to the US South for reporting, and I was going to write, I hope, what seemed to be on paper anyway, an amazing story. I had an amazing source that I was going to work with, and I was really looking forward to telling his story. And unfortunately, that all fell through, and I couldn't do it anymore because he's in prison, and so I can't do that via Zoom. And that made that story very difficult. So I was sad about that. But then we moved to online classes, and we've kind of adjusted.
I went to work Friday, the 14th of March, and feeling very anxious, what's going on. And it was like, kids and I are doing guided reading, and we get a message from the principal, and he hardly ever, sends text messages saying, check your emails. And during recess, check my email, and they're telling us, okay, prepare work for the kids. We're going to be, closing down the schools. And that in itself was really scary, because it's never happened before. And for them to say, we're closing down our schools, we're closing down our school districts. I'm getting emails from my daughter's school saying the same thing. And that district is even bigger. They're San Diego Unified, second largest district in California, saying that they're going to be closing down. And so that was just scary. And at that point, I go into like, just kind of, I don't know, just mom mode.
So like, I feel like I'm really grateful. I feel like I wear many hats. And as a mom, I'm really lucky. I'm really fortunate and blessed that I do experience privilege.
And this is big. We are now in the middle of this. And this is for the entire world. Now it's not only for a region, because if we are in the Middle East, in some parts of the Middle East, some parts of Africa, maybe the world is already shaking now because they're facing a war, facing conflicts, facing other challenges. Now we are in a very comfortable situation. Now we have healthcare, we have electricity, we have food.
Can safely quarantine in our home, and my kids have a yard to play in. And so we are very fortunate in my family that we're healthy and that we're safe. But suddenly becoming a homeschool mom to two very precocious tornadoes is a lot on its own, but then to like have to teach them and be homeschooling at home is a whole other thing.
Yeah, so I am constantly mindful of the danger, the ways that the virus has a disparate impact on particular communities in this country.
Now we need to remember that so many people are not in so good situation. So many people in vulnerable countries, in a vulnerable population inside the countries, now living in low-income neighborhoods, slums, or indigenous populations, or people in other countries that is not doing so well, don't have all the health systems and all the situation that we have now.
And then I'm really overwhelmed by this, like the trauma that's happening around us, around all these invisible workers that are part of my work. We've created something over the past 4 years together using theater, and that same ensemble of individuals who are working people, they're not professional performers, but I tell them that they're an ensemble because we work together collaboratively and create beautiful pieces of art that we take out into the world. They are on the front lines of this pandemic in a way that is really dangerous for them and is really unfair. And I'm overwhelmed at the fact that we keep saying we're all in this together, but really we're all in a storm, and it's a really shitty storm. But some people are on riding on yachts and big Air Force ships that have big barges where there's a lot of security, and other people are in rafts and canoes that have holes in them and they're sinking. And I don't think it's very fair, because nobody should have to die from this preventable disease. And I question the word and phrase of essential workers. I think that if you're an EMT and a paramedic, or a doctor or a nurse, and you are absolutely frontline and essential. I think that if you are a person that is part of producing our food that everyone's eating, the meat processing plants, and the food that ends up in our freezer sections and stuff, and the farm workers who are picking carrots and vegetables and things, they're essential workers. But I feel like capitalism and profit is really at play. And I'm not so sure that the factory that makes popcorn is really essential. And I'm not so sure that the factory that makes shampoo is really essential. I think we as Americans could go without some of the products and have to experience a little discomfort so that there could be more safety for everyone. So I'm frustrated and overwhelmed. Sorry.
Well, personally,
And then on the personal level, because I could see the disruption as you are experiencing, my children as well, with all the changes and the anxiety of bringing them home. And
like, okay, I want to keep, my little tribe at home, and because this is some serious stuff going on.
before, became difficult to get transportation. Personally, I have a fear, I believe, like most people have.
I'm finding myself suffering from quite a bit of cabin fever.
Kind of like we're all in hiding. So I mean, it's impacted us just in a sense that not only are we all doing our work at home, we're not leaving home, and we're kind of like hiding and just being scared more than anything.
And aside from that, just general anxiety.
And I personally, I worry about everything, and I tend to overthink everything. And at this time, that's like the worst, the worst that I could do. But that's just kind of in my nature, overthink everything. And
I think there's an overriding anxiety about the virus.
How I protect myself, because I hope I would be a person that if I would be infected, I would be having enough immune system to just get through it.
It's about living in the epicenter city of this pandemic. And just because I'm a newsman, I follow the news a lot, and that means that makes me even more anxious most days.
But the fear that's very, very deep inside of all of us, that we may not be that one. And so you sort of have to put that little fear in a little box and just leave that, do all the precautions you can, and then outside of that, try to live with as much normalcy as possible.
So while, as far as I know, I personally am not ill from COVID. I know a lot of people who are or who were.